Well, hello, folks. I'm Jeffrey Daugherty, the Christian whistleblower. Welcome to the Jeff Daugherty Show, New Cosmic Knowledge, Christian whistleblower YouTube channel. It's my pleasure to have with me today Mr. R. Wayne Steiger. And we're going to be talking about the Colburn Bible. We're going to be talking about the destroyer. We're going to be talking about a lot of the things that are on a lot of minds today. And hopefully, we'll find some common ground, and we'll find some ground, maybe the road that is less traveled, and perhaps step away from the doom and gloom, fear-driven agenda, and maybe get to something deeper by looking into the actual historical meanings and the actual historical context of some of these great apocalyptic scriptures. Are you with me, Wayne?
I am, my friend. Let me get the video there. There we go. How are you doing?
I'm great. I love that red shirt.
Hey, thank you. It's for the, it's a great day here. I got to tell you, the weather has just been phenomenal. So yeah, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to, really at your urging, initially, I've decided to go up to Nashville and be a partaker of the whole total eclipse scenario.
I believe you will find it well worth the time.
Wayne, let's talk about this real quick off the top, if you don't mind. I have got several messages and emails from well-meaning and kind supporters saying, "Oh, Jeff, you don't want to do it. It's a evil portent. There's bad juju. There's bad things that come through eclipses. You should just stay away." Have you heard any of that, and how would you respond?
Yeah, well, a lot of that is based upon superstition. And the question that I had one good friend, she was kind of like that. And I said, well, let's just stop and examine this. I said, if it's nothing more than just a celestial event, the fact that a human being can witness a satellite moving in front of a star, how is that bad? And she said, well, no, she said, you have to understand there's spirits and everything else here. And I said, yeah, but one of the things I've read, and when I was a practicing Christian, was that I had authority. I had the blood of Jesus. And at the name of Jesus, every knee shall bow and every tongue shall confess, right? And I said, so how is this going to hurt me? And of course, she said, well, best of luck. So, listen, this is a rare event. I do believe, Jeff, there is a spiritual significance to this, because if you just study history, every culture throughout the current epoch has always viewed celestial events as having a great meaning. It's either an omen for something of a future, or it's a sign of something about to happen.
And you know, it's interesting, and I find myself being, I don't know if being the skeptic is the right term, but I don't know if it's my, the little bit of anthropological background I have, but as you say that, what comes into my mind is I understand exactly what you're saying, and that is exactly observably true. However, I would offer, is it the event that brings the portents, or is it because people are focusing on the event and using it as a catalyst or an excuse or something to, is it the bell that's been rung by some Pavlovian existential deity? Is it, it's the whole chicken or egg thing. Do things happen because of the event, or do people focus on the event and cause things to happen?
I'm going to throw in the equation to the latter. I think this is a collective conscious event.
Ah, very good.
The celestial event's going to happen regardless, but really what makes it meaningful is the observer.
Absolutely.
In this case, there's going to be millions of us observing this. Thought has a impact. And when you've got millions of people in awe of this, that's almost a religious experience.
Absolutely. It's almost like Fatima or Jesus on the side of the building or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, Wayne, are you anticipating some of these things we're talking about, huge traffic jams, can't get a hotel room, disorder? Do you really think there's going to be that many people that are going to go see it?
Well, I know in Wyoming, where we're going up to, and we're going out in the middle of nowhere, You can't find a room in any of the totality path in these small towns like Douglas, Wyoming. So there are apparently, we have been told, we're allowing 6 hours for a normal 3-hour trip because we anticipate so much traffic going up the interstate, in this case, Interstate 25.
You know, that really surprises me, and it, in a way, it encourages me, because I would have thought people are way too busy watching some singing contest or who's going to get voted off the island. And to think that people really do have enough interest in this. And I'm going to my friend's house in Nashville, so I'll make sure that I allow and I'm going to go a couple days early, so I don't think I'll have any issues. But it's almost encouraging to me that there are enough people that care enough about this to put down their cell phones and turn off the television and actually go out and observe some natural event.
And you think about this, Jeff, just step back as well. I can't remember an event in my lifetime. I can't remember in my parents' lifetime where we've had a celestial event that cuts right through the heart of America.
No. You know, the only thing that really even springs my memory was that whole Kohoutek comet thing, and that it turned it up to be a dud.
Yeah, and I remember Hale-Bopp. That was quite a comet. You know? But getting back, I think that what's happening.
Now, you weren't wearing tennis shoes and carrying a laptop at that time, were you?
I was a geek back then. Actually, yeah, I was out in California designing the first pharmaceutical inventory system. But anyway.
But you weren't part of Heaven's Gate.
No,
obviously,
I wasn't.
because you're still here.
No, I still enjoy terra firma. But I think, Jeff, that this is just me. As you know, on my channel, I'm doing this series called the Origin Series.
Right.
And it's examining all the ancient manuscripts, much like the bronze books and the Chaldean text throughout this. And even I was just studying the Mayans. They found eclipses, and they were very good at predicting them, as was the Chinese, that when these events happened in their area, it was a major event. So do I think that there's a spiritual component? Yes, I do. I've studied this, and here's my take. I think it's, as the teacher taught us, as a man thinketh in his heart, so he is. Now, I think you go and you project your expectation. And so if your expectation is that you're going to see something negative to this, well, guess what? Chances are you're going to get exactly what you said. And to go back, I always like think about Mark 11:24. You know, if you believe in your heart and say unto this mountain, be ye cast up, thrown into the sea, and not doubt that those things for which you say shall come to pass, you shall have them. Now, you know, these were principles laid down a long time ago. So I see this event as a closing and an opening.
Interesting.
Yeah, I personally think, let's talk a little science. Have you heard of the Schulman resonance?
I have.
Okay, so you know what's happened now. We recorded 7.8 megahertz. I mean, it was steady, just like the heartbeat. It's up hitting now 41.
Wow.
So what's happening? Now, I've been looking at this, and I've been going back through the scriptures and going back. I think we've missed something, Jeff. And I think that we have missed that the fact that Earth is a living organism.
Absolutely. And we've more than missed it, Wayne. It's been suppressed, and we've been programmed to miss it.
Yeah. And to our ill will, may I say.
Oh, to our great loss.
Yep. And I think that what Earth has done, I just did a video yesterday saying the event is happening. And I am convinced, Jeff, that we are on the verge of something. Everywhere I go, every person I talk to, they sense it as well. It's almost like that's like a background buzz. You know, you can ignore it, but yet it's still there. And
are you one that hears that ringing in the ears that you're talking about, ascension ringing? I don't hear it. Do you?
Yeah, my wife and I suffer from it terribly. We thought it was tinnitus, and so we got our ears checked. Not that at all.
I must not be as ascension minded as you folks.
No, I don't know about that. It could also be the Gwyn Towers.
It could.
It could. You know, G5, all I can tell your listeners is check out what G5 really is. I think there's enough.
Otherwise known as 5G, right?
Yes, sir. And there's enough anecdotal evidence now coming in that this constant electromagnetic soup that we walk in 24/7 is having an impact on us.
Absolutely.
We just don't know what it's really actually doing. Now, if the Earth is resonating a frequency that's out of balance, then that tells me we ought to be more alert. Jeff, let me just bring this back. Earlier this year, they were recording a number of events where we saw large migrations up in Yellowstone moving out of the park.
Yeah, I remember Rex talking about that.
Yes. And so what have we witnessed in the last month? Increase what we call, and now the word just escaped me.
Seismic activity?
Yes, there are and they're in bunches. And we know that the magma chamber is filling up. We found out that the thing underneath what we thought was the magma chamber is actually 3 times as large than what it was anticipated. We see such anomalies in weather. We're seeing patterns. I did a video about 3 months ago on the continued mass extinction of animal life. And we're finding it everywhere. So are we just, I don't know, Jeff, have we become so narcissistic that we have failed to see the signals, the signs? You know, when I was a Christian for so many years, I was told, always look for the signs, always look for the signs. And the problem was, is I was going around looking for the signs in everything. And exactly. There wasn't anything going on that was noticeable. Now here we are, 2017, we're seeing odd anomalies from our sun. We're finding odd anomalies with our earth. We're finding odd anomalies with the plant kingdom, the animal kingdom. I don't know.
Yeah, there's obviously something going on. I think the idea that the earth is a living organism, call her Gaia, whatever you'd like to call her, definitely a living organism. And there's definitely things that are taking place. And my take has always been, and I look forward to asking Heidi Vandenberg this later on today. She's going to be on the show.
Excellent.
Is that I think a lot of times these end time predictions, these predictions and the woe surrounding them, I wonder if it may not be even unintentionally, but perhaps even intentionally structured to make us focus on the negative, the scary, the potentially bad, because if we're focused on that, then we're not able to step back objectively and say, oh, what could I learn from this? What could be positive from this? How can I be helped by this? And if there are spiritual aspects of these events that we're witnessing, what do you think the possibility is that if we're focused on the fear and the doom and gloom, that we might well miss the positive parts of it?
Good. Oh, Jeff, your words are just so well seasoned and at the right time, because, all right, let's talk about the doom and gloom of the judgment calls.
And Wayne, let me just say before we start, the guy that started me down this road was George Norrie. I mean, every time I'm on that show, he makes the statement that something about, Jeff, one of the things I like about you is, you know, you talk about many of the same things that people that come on the show talk about, but in your story, it usually has a happy ending. You're not all about the doom and gloom. So George kind of put me on that train of thought. I started analyzing it.
Well, I'll give you a little story about George. George and I worked together in St. Louis back in the mid 80s.
Wow. And Night Ranger, was he, or something like that?
Well, actually, I knew George Norrie as, okay, I'll share this with you, and you're going to be on there, and if you can share this with him.
Okay.
So I was out raising capital to put in a world-class video production center into St. Louis. There was a utility company there called Laclede Gas that had built a studio, a great post house, and this guy, George Norrie, come up and bought it.
Wow.
So I'm making this deal with Trammell Crow. We're looking at prime real estate, and I'm working to get the spot. we had a setback in the company that was coming in. George comes in, builds the place out, and then I end up buying it with the company that came in. So George, I just love the man, and to see where he has come tells you how many of us are warriors in this journey that we're on. And George has allowed a voice to the people that has expanded, I think, the collective consciousness of our species.
Oh, absolutely. And it's interesting for me to hear that, even after having done business with George and knowing George for a long time, you still have such a high opinion of him. That does indeed speak well of him.
He's a good man, good soul, good soul. And I want to say this, when we talk about then, as you said, the positive to the negative, I want to share something with you. For many, many decades, I always had a problem with the book of Revelations because it's a hard book to read. I mean, it has so much symbolism in. It's a document that's thousands of years old, has had so many iterations as to what it is. I came to an epiphany, Jeff, about 2 weeks ago. And that is, I found Revelations 12 in an ancient Chaldean text. Now,
please share.
So Revelation 12 is Michael and the dragon.
Right.
That story was told 1,000 years before there was a Hebrew. It's in the Chaldean account. In fact, Tiamat is the dragon. And the angel that fights it, it's the exact same story, almost verbatim.
Now, is the woman with child in there?
The virgin, the whole bit.
That's amazing.
How about an only begotten son?
In the ancient record.
Yes, in the ancient Chaldean text. Jeff,
well, that's excellent. I did not know that. That's new news to me.
Yes, it is. I did a video on it. And because I challenge people now to say, listen, folks, wait a minute. How can you have a New Testament prophecy? And listen, all of us agree that when you start talking about Revelation, you're going to get a family fight because
exactly.
You're going to have pre-trib, mid-trib, post-trib. You're going to get the interpretation where the 12, the 7 churches, if the seven churches fail, that it gets into this weirdly weird stuff. I always like the 20th chapter of Revelations. It says that no liar will get into heaven. Well, forget the human species, because we ain't going. So
I just had an interesting observation, Wayne, when you're talking about pre-trib, mid-trib, post-trib, and people that aren't in the Christianity or never been don't have any idea what we're talking about, but they've got this thing they call the tribulation, what's going to happen in the future. There's this other thing called the rapture, which is going to take you out of this tribulation, and you either believe you're going to miss all of it, half of it, or none of it. But it's interesting, Wayne, if you think about it and sit back, if you don't really know anything, if you don't really study, and you're just along for the ride, you're just going along with the program, you're definitely pre-trib.
Yeah.
But if you start studying a little bit in the scriptures and you start looking at history and you start looking at what the Greek really says and you start looking at what the Hebrew really says, then you know, a little bit in that study, you find yourself to be a mid-tribber because,
you're moving the goal.
And then finally, when you really wake up and understand what's going on and what's really there, you're definitely a post-tribber.
Well, because you're looking
at yourself right out.
And that's what I came to the conclusion years ago. And I went, oh man, do you mean I'm really going to have to go through this? And that's how it is. I love so many of my Christian friends. They still pray for me. And, they think, Wayne, you've really just become deceived. And as I tell them all the time, I've actually found God.
Absolutely.
Let me tell you, my whole life as a Christian, I lived in fear. And
by design,
because that's how it's taught.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what that does to a person's psychic in the inside?
What does it do to them energetically, even physically?
Oh, it affects us all the way around. It's where we get psychoses from. It's where we get depression from. It's because we're playing these things out in our head, trying to figure out, how would I walk this balance? Mm-hmm. I'm glad we're talking about this. So in my devotion this morning, in the book of Isaiah, it says that God forgives and forgets all of our sins. He puts it in the sea of forgetfulness. Why the hell do we need salvation now?
Exactly. Exactly.
I mean, okay, here's another one. So Adam and Eve ate of the fruit of the tree of knowledge, right? Of good and evil.
That's what we hear.
Why the hell don't we know all the knowledge?
Exactly. Exactly. Let me throw this out, Wayne, before we segue into the Colburn Bible and the Destroyer. Everybody looks at Daniel. Oh, the end of the world. They look at Revelation. Oh, the end of the world. They look at Matthew 24. Oh, the end of the world. And we're so lazy intellectually these days. We're so ethnocentric, just focusing on our own self. And I wonder what would happen if we would take a minute back and realize, okay, here's my Bible right here. What does that say about us? We're not in the church anymore, but we both got Bibles within arm's reach.
Here's mine. It's the Hebrew New Testament, Old Testament.
Well, listen, I can tell that you're a nice guy, but you obviously weren't of the upper elite crust of spirituality because you don't have a Dake annotated reference Bible.
I do have my Dake Bible, though.
All right. My faith in you is restored.
In fact, I have Phineas's last, when he did in fact, it was the old video days of him doing his teaching on Revelations.
Phineas Jennings Dake is who we're referencing to. Wayne, I'll never forget the day when Jimmy Swaggart looked at me, pointed his finger at me, and said, Jeffrey Dart, if you don't get a Dake's Bible, you're stupid. But anyway, what was my point? Oh, end of the world. So we're looking at a Jewish document.
Yeah.
Daniel's a Jewish document. From Genesis to Revelation is a Jewish document.
Yep.
And we're talking about end of the world. We're thinking about the end of our world. But if you put this book in context, it's a Jewish document talking about the end of the world. And Wayne, if you look at the prophecies, even this whole September 23rd, Revelation 12 craziness and madness that's going on.
And it is.
What was the end of the world to the Jewish person? Was it not the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple in AD 70? And if you look at all these prophecies, that's what they're talking about, the end of their world as they knew it, not the end of our world in 2017 or 1844, 1914, 1988, 1975, 2011, 2015. And now it looks like the dummies are still going to predict 2017. I'm sorry, that's my rant.
Well, no, and let me just add to that rant. We misinterpreted. The Jews saw it as a celebration. It was a release. They ascend to the top. They were going to be relieved of the oppression of their enemies, that the earth was made for them. This is a cleansing.
Yeah.
It's what I read.
They got a release, but it wasn't the one they expected.
No. And look where they are today.
Yeah.
I have a lot of good Jewish friends. In fact, in Nashville, years ago, back in 1990, there was a Rabbi Fuchs, and he really enlightened me to a whole lot. He was the first one. He said, let me tell you my race's view of the 12 apostles. And they see them as traitors.
Yeah. It's interesting. I dated a beautiful Jewish woman for a couple years, and we had these kind of talks, and it was very fascinating to get an understanding of Christianity through the lens of Jewish culture. It was just eye-opening to me.
Listen, if people want to read a good book,
Caesar's Messiah. I keep getting told about that book.
I'm telling you, this is my second one. And
so I told you I had this, Wayne.
Yes. Great book. Well,
and I just picked this up.
You rascal.
American Book of the Dead.
Yeah. Are you going to do a show on that one?
I think I will. And of course, I can't escape my proclivities towards the strange and bizarre, because now we've got Billy's Back, which is the whole Paul is dead thing.
Oh, cool deal. Let me know how that goes.
I will. I did actually a whole video series on the
Paul that's alive today, or is it his double?
Well, it probably won't surprise you to know that I have a view that's held by no one else but me. And I think that Paul was greatly changed and altered, but it wasn't because he was killed and replaced. It was because he and Elvis Presley were subjected to huge, intense MK Ultra, Tavistock type mind control, and perhaps even temporal shifting across time and space, which accounts for the physical changes in McCartney.
Excellent, excellent. It's interesting you talk about that, because behind me, I'm working on a lot of different physics on time, and the fact that we have to understand events are not time. Time measure the events.
Absolutely.
And anyway, that's very, let me know how that book is. I may want to get it.
Talk to me about the Colburn Bible and the Destroyer, Wayne.
So it's interesting about this book. What people need to understand is that there is a story of creation in here. In
which book are we talking about?
We're actually talking about this one right here.
Okay.
And
the bronze book.
Yes, it's the bronze books. And a lot of people will focus in on the Destroyer side, but they're not reading virtually the first half of this book. It's a documentation of the Egyptian history. And these were the Egyptian scribes. They were priests. And they wrote down what they witnessed and how their view of creation was. I found it really interesting, Jeff, here for instance, in the creation story in chapter 3. Listen to this. At the time of the great destruction of earth, God caused a dragon from out of heaven to come and encompassed her about. The dragon was frightful to behold, and it lashed its tail, and its breath out fire and hot coals, and great catastrophe was inflicted upon mankind.
Wayne, can I stop you right there for a second?
Yeah.
Jeremiah 4:23. Are you familiar with it?
Yeah.
Jeremiah says that something came, destroyed the earth. It says it was the Lord, and he destroyed the earth through his fiery wrath blown through his nostrils.
No, there it is.
That's a dragon.
The dragon.
Holy wow, that's great stuff.
And then
go ahead.
No, but you can go to the Chaldean account of Genesis in the 3rd book, and guess what you're going to read? The dragon.
So is the being that we call the Lord Tiamat? You said Tiamat was a dragon?
Okay, so
is he Marduk? Yeah. Or is he Enlil? Or is he Enki?
I think they're all one and the same. I had a chart that actually did the org chart. So as I'm understanding, chaos was the beginning. There was no light. But there were creatures that existed in this chaos. And that chaos is called Tiamat.
Ah, okay.
It's called the living deep waters.
Interesting.
And as the universe is, as God is duality. These people got the weird idea that God's all this way. That can't work in the universe. If you have a positive polarity that basically knocks out the negative polarity, it self-destructs itself.
Yeah. Wayne, before we get too far down the road, you say that it started off in chaos. If you go to Dake's Bible, you're certainly aware of the Genesis 1:1, which corresponds with I forget which passage in Isaiah, where in the beginning the gods created the heavens and the earth. Yeah. Isaiah says it wasn't created tohu and bohu, without form and void, but it was created habited, beautiful. Jeremiah looks at it, says, I beheld the earth was without form and void in Jeremiah 4:23. He says the men were gone, the birds were gone, the cities were gone, the fruitful place was gone. So respond, if you will, with free rein to my conviction that in the beginning, the gods created the heavens and the earth. It was beautiful. It was perfect. It was awesome. It did have people. It did have cities. And then for some reason, which I posit reasons to explain it, the Lord broke from the Elohim, became that dragon, caused it to become without form and void. So for me, if I'm thinking, if it started in chaos, are you saying before Genesis 1:1 was chaos, or before the chaos of Genesis 1:1, where it says was, which is became, every other place in the scripture, perfect world becomes without form and void? Are you talking about that chaos after that or chaos before that?
Before that. The Hebrews, the Semites, when they wrote, they always put the main subject in the first line of the sentence. And if you read Genesis 1:1, in the beginning.
So in that beginning, there was chaos.
Exactly. It's not God, not anything to do with him. In the beginning. We never studied what the beginning was.
Fascinating.
The Chaldean account brings it out very clearly what it was. There were hideous creatures there, half man, half animal. It's where we got the centaurs from. It's got this age that was here. The,
Chimeras.
the gods came together, the Elohims, what do you want to call them? They came together and they created matter.
Did they exist in the chaos, the Elohim?
Yes, they did. Yes, they did. They arose.
It's a tough concept to think about divine beings who we think of being creative and orderly and fashioning things, for them to exist in chaos. And it becomes even more fascinating when you think, how long did gods exist in chaos? How long did gods permit chaos? Was chaos ruling the gods? Were the gods ruling chaos? Wow, it's a great, great study and way to think.
Well, it is. And let me just add to that whole thing, where we get this duality of God. Let's go to Enoch, the 3rd chapter. Again, you've got Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael going before God. And I'm going to use Wayne Steiger's words. God, got a problem. Have you seen what the heck's going on down there? Our brothers have down there and they have polluted the whole place. God's still sitting there. Michael says to him, why did you allow this? Do you not know what our brethren have done to mankind? Now I want to bring your readers, let's jump to Psalms 80. And what happens? This is the assembly of the Elohims.
Yep.
And the supreme, the source comes in, and what does he give? He pronounces a judgment on this Elohim.
But Wayne, there's only one God.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I even in Christianity, they go with the monotheism, but you're giving me the Trinity concept. Come on now, and then once I gave
from one God to, there's 3 of them because it's the Trinity, to like, oh man, this whole thing doesn't work.
So when I used to preach, I actually put this in one of my lessons. I said, well, because I had a problem with the Trinity, and
any thinking person would.
You would have to. Mm-hmm. So my answer to it was humor. It's like the guy, the schizophrenic that decides to commit suicide, and the cops come in and say, but wait a minute, this is a hostage situation.
I mean, you laugh, but think about it. God becomes Jesus.
Well, let's just stop right there. Let's just quit this myth about Jesus. And I know people are just going to rail on me about this. Folks, the letter J did not exist until 1654.
You're exactly right.
If you read the 1611 edition of Shakespeare's King James Bible, you will see the name is Jesus.
It is.
Now, you do not listen, here's what I challenge all my Christians. Let's just say this cockamamie story of this translation that got to Jesus was correct. Now that you know the truth, why didn't we change all the Old Testament Hebrew names?
Yep. And it's really as simple as this, Wayne. Oh, but it's, we call him Jesus because it's translated and it's transmutated and blah, blah. Sit down and watch any newscast in a language that is not your own. Spanish, French, German, don't care what it is. You'll hear, and I don't mean to say blah, blah, blah to be disrespectful to people's languages, but you'll hear, blah, Spanish, Donald Trump, Spanish, Hillary Clinton, Spanish, George Bush. You don't translate proper names.
You do not, particularly deities.
So anyway, if God comes down, creates in this son. So where'd God go? He's right here. And then God sacrifices the son who is God. So was the crucifixion a murder by a God that said, do not kill, or was it a suicide by a God that said, do not kill? I'm confused.
Well, it gets really confused in the beginning, because when the gods created light, guess what? The animals and man could not live in it. They died.
Where do we find that?
It's in the Chaldean account, the 2nd book.
That's amazing.
So when you read the Chaldean account of Genesis, when they created this, and it was Baruch who had to come in, he had to redo it all over again. And I find that interesting because in the book of Genesis, I contend and have this is my interpretation, that between Genesis 1 and Genesis 2, we've got two creations.
Absolutely. No doubt about it.
Well, this correlates exactly to the Chaldean text. There was two creations. The first one didn't work. Now, when they finally got it right, there wasn't a single race, meaning species. Apparently, there were those, and you can call what it is, but apparently the gods made many versions of us. And by the way, as I've told you before, in Robert Seffer's book, The Species with Amnesia on the Human Genome Project, it validated that.
Yeah.
Because we now know we're not a single species with a single bloodline. So,
and even the book of Genesis, Wayne, says before, after the destruction in Genesis 1, between Genesis and 1:1 and 1:2, that you talk about coming out of the Chaldean record, and then we talk about coming out of Jeremiah and Isaiah. Before man is created in Genesis 1:26 and 27, back up in Genesis 1:21, and who knows how many years are represented in that 5-verse gap, but it says God created the great whales. Well, yes, so what? He created great whales. Look it up in the Hebrew. He created majestic serpents. Get into the Hebrew. He created upright, humanoid, hominid serpents, a reptilian race. What?
And by the way, our brain shows that.
Absolutely.
It does. And it gets weirder than this. So in the Chaldean account that goes back further than their records, this great serpent lived in the ocean. This serpent is 300 miles long. There were two of them. And Michael came down and fought one, killed the male.
Like a beast rising out of the sea.
Bingo. Bingo. Yeah. And by the way, I want to finish this part that I had started.
Please do.
It says the dragon was frightful, as we talked, and it said the body of the dragon was wreathed in a cold, bright light, and beneath, on the belly, it was a ruddy hue glow, while behind it trailed a flowing tail of smoke. It spewed out cinders and hot stones, and its breath was foul and stenchful, poisoning the nostrils of men. Its passage caused drake thundering and lightnings to rend a thick, darkened sky. All heaven and earth were made hot. The seas loosened from their cradles and rose up, pouring across the land. There was an awful, shrilling trumpeting coming from the sky, which overpowered even the howling of the new, unfrightful, unleashed winds. And it goes on to talk about it literally loosened the bowels of men. They went to bed, they got up the next morning, and everything was changed. Everything.
Wow.
And actually what they describe here, Jeff, is a pole shift. So I'm going to give you a copy. I'm going to send you a copy of this.
I was just going to go on Amazon as soon as we got off air.
And you will find that when you get over now, by the way.
Now, and when the other book you sent me, is that those are the Chaldean?
I did. Yeah, you have it. Yeah, you've got the book now.
Yeah.
And here is a lot of our accounts. These drawings date back way back. So I have a picture.
Oh, Wayne, you got to be wrong, because that's clearly an angel. Comes right out of the Old Testament.
Angels don't exist. Well, they're actually ETs, folks.
And I was just watching this guy on YouTube that said that the Hebrew texts are the most ancient writings that we've ever found, and it was on YouTube, so I know it has to be true.
Oh yeah. Well, how is he counting?
They're not even close to the most ancient.
No. And you know what, Jeff? Here's the thing. When I dated my Jewish lady, we had discussions as well. And when I read this book right here, Caesar's Messiah, and you understand.
No, I like how that's, first of all, it started out, I had this talk with this rabbi, and I learned about Judaism. I come clean, and now you come clean. We hear there's more to the story.
Because here's what I was taught. Christianity is an insult to the Jews.
Absolutely.
That's what Titus, the Flavians intended it to be.
Yeah.
They took their God, demeaned the God to nothing. And then they transposed this God because Christianity didn't have a God. That was the problem.
Yeah.
The early church fathers struggled with that. And that was one of the problems, what we all know about on the story of Constantine.
Yeah. And you know, Wayne, it's so fascinating when I was taken back. I had some interactions with Jimmy Swaggart and talking about how the Jews view the Christians. Jimmy went and talked to this group of rabbis, and he thought it was going to be the greatest thing ever. And he talks about moving the capital back to Jerusalem, and he's talking about Jerusalem, USA, city of David. He expected thunderous response. They sat there with their arms crossed, just looking at him, and he could not figure out why they didn't think he was the greatest thing, because he just didn't get what they think about us, no matter what we're saying.
No, it's an insult to them.
Yep.
Listen, I challenge all my Christian friends. Ask me this question: is God a Christian?
Not only is he a Christian, he's a Baptist, Catholic, Methodist, Pentecostal. Not only that, he's from our church, Wayne.
Yeah, but we don't want to get serious about this, Jeff. And so the question that I had, one guy challenge me. He said, that's a trick question. I said, what do you mean it's a trick question? It's very simple. It's yes or no. He says, well, if I answer yes, you're going to say then everyone else is lost. If I answer no, then you're going to tell me I'm lost. I said, you've already answered your own question.
It is.
It is.
It's kind of like, whose inscription's on that coin?
Exactly. Listen, do I believe that there was a teacher that was around 35 AD? According to Josephus, there were many of them.
Right.
Was there one named Yeshua? There is no record of such.
That's a constant irritation to me. You can't prove the existence of a manifested Christ in a human form.
And
I want to believe it. You can't prove it empirically.
And here's the problem. We have this disconnect when we think about the first century. We've got this idea that was by Cecil B. DeMille when he had Charleston Heston coming in, and then we had in the late 70s, we had Jesus of Nazareth. And that firmly implanted into all the generations since that point that Jerusalem was this bustling town. But we never asked ourselves, why didn't they write? Why didn't they draw? I mean, surely these people had to know. In fact, history shows that Herod was a very smart guy. The reason why the Romans found Judea so attractive, but a real pain in their ass, was this. Herod had the most educated subjects. Everyone from the age of 5 to the age of 17 was required to go to school. They knew Greek, they knew Latin, and they knew Arabic.
Wow.
And you notice I said not Hebrew, Arabic. That's what they were taught. Now, with an educated society, are you telling me that you had God walking on earth? No one's doing their own drawings. Nobody is writing their own stories. Oh, wait a minute.
And not to mention, Philo writes a history of Judea of the first 100 years. No mention of any Jesus, no mention of any crucifixion, no mention of any resurrection. Come on, man.
And they won't study real history. The Bible is not an historical document. It is, folks, what it is, it's an illustration. Mm-hmm. It is nothing more than a literary work. It's called typology, Jeff.
Absolutely.
Typology is a definition to where you take real events at a real time and insert imaginary characters into it.
Absolutely.
And why it works so well is that because as time erodes, the evidence becomes ingrained to the story.
Absolutely.
So
can I share a verse with you that really helped bring it into focus for me?
Please do.
And I can't cite the exact reference right now. I can look it up real quick. The Christ says, my flesh profiteth nothing. If you look that up in the Hebrew, he says, the details and circumstances of my life, my physical body, and my entire incarnation are worthless, he says. They don't matter. So did he live? Did he not live? Was his name Yeshua, Yeshua, Humahaga? But he said, it's my message. My words are truth. and life. We can argue till the cows come home, and that's a long time because typically the cows don't come home till right before dawn. We could argue the J, the W, whatever, but whether he was real, whether he wasn't real. But the fact of the matter is, we do know that there is a message that contains power to help us live life and life more abundant, that will give us peace that passes all understanding if we follow the ways and the truths that were laid down by the Christ, be him one guy, 10 guys, and 25 women cobbled together. Doesn't matter. Doesn't care. The physicality does not matter. It's the message that matters. And it's the message that can change your life. And oh, by the way, the dude said, hey, as long as I stay around, you guys are a bunch of babies. You'll never get this. So I got to leave. It's better for you if I leave. Then we'll send the comforter, and you guys can maybe get yourself checked out.
And when I read the gospel, particularly Matthew, what I see is a thread that dates back to the heritage. And these are good words. Do I say that? Yeah, I'm like you. It doesn't matter whether he was or was not. What I do have, whoever wrote those words are immortal.
Absolutely.
They will outlive all of us. I dare say, as it is with many of the ancient scriptures I found, they shall be immortalized. It's because it's part of us. So whether it was Jesus, whether it was Yeshua, the master, the teacher, doesn't matter. Someone wrote the words and they bless me. I don't know about you. Well, the word bless, I'll tell you what they do. They uplift me.
Exactly.
It edifies.
I don't know if you, I chuckled.
I was gonna say, when I heard the word bless, I went, well, let's stop about there.
Did you see that video?
I did.
I read that. I'm like, gross. I can't say that anymore.
It's like, oh man. And there you go. It's the power of speech.
Yep.
It's
the point is, Wayne, that you're so good at bringing out is that this stuff existed long before it got into the Bible and into Jewish culture and then got into Western culture. We really are being, number one, we're being robbed of some of our heritage. And number two, we're being kept intentionally stupid because they don't want us to know where it comes from. Because once we start learning where it comes from, we break the bonds of this Roman Judeo-Christian mind meld that we're in, and we begin to see the world as a whole lot bigger and better place. It's kind of, this is a little pet peeve of mine. Americans, we never go anywhere. We think we do it the only way, the best way. It's the only way it is. Actually travel around the world and see that, these people in Germany have an interesting way of doing something. I might try that. These people in Italy aren't as stupid as I thought. These people in the Scandinavian countries aren't as stupid as I thought. You can actually learn something from other cultures by visiting them. And if you can't visit, boy, you can learn a lot by reading. Become a student of history. History, if we don't learn from history, we're doomed to repeat it.
Yeah.
And they won't teach it to us, and they hide it from us. Because why? They want us to stay in this cycle. Boom.
And by the way, I just had a caveat on that cycle. It's coming to an end.
Tell me what you mean, Wayne Steiger.
Okay. Throughout the Bible, and I have over here on my other desk, every ancient scripture I've read talks about an end, whether you want to use the word epoch, age, time, whatever.
And you're not just talking biblical scripture.
No. I am talking about endings.
Yep.
We're coming to an ending.
But I thought that was 2012.
Well, I think that this is it's like a, I'm trying to use the right analogy, allegory here. It's like a slow moving ice floe coming down.
Got it.
It looks completely innocuous as you're watching this until suddenly it snaps. And throughout recorded history, Jeff, it has always been that way.
Yeah.
It happens in literally a blinking of an eye. And here's what I have found. I do a study. I found out the soul. I got that. Figured that out. What a great day. Now I look at death, because death is, in fact, it's the one thing you and I and everyone else has in common. I believe, like you, that we have been taught the fear aspect of it, where, in fact, I am finding writings now that show a different side of it. that it's a transition. Do you know, here's something for you, that there is a culture that existed that actually looked at death as a release. They welcomed it. They found it to be the next part of this journey. They not feared it. They did not run from it. When the elderly were ready to go, you know what they did? Most of them went into their cots, pulled up the covers, and passed on. They were taught how to do that, Jeff. We're not taught that.
We're taught the opposite because they want us to fear death so they can hold out the golden ticket. You've got to do what we do, what we say, when we say, how we say, keep paying us to maybe get to this place and maybe not. And I read this book. I don't know why this is sitting here, but it's interesting. The University of Spiritualism.
Oh, yeah.
And I started, the thing that spiritualism gave me was this idea of, okay, we believe we're spirits and we're trapped in a body. You know, this body is just something that we're using. It's not us. And we move out of it. And the idea is we have to come back and reincarnate to keep learning. But if we're really a spirit, then why would we have to come back into a body to keep learning? Can't we grow and develop as a spirit and keep moving on, which is kind of what along the line of spiritualist thought, and is exactly what you were talking about. There's that cycle again. Somebody, something, some organized principle wants us to not progress. They want us to just keep going round and round, like John Lennon talked about on that wheel that goes round and round, a hamster wheel.
I'm having a gentleman tomorrow. Going to be doing an interview with him. His name is Gary Purvis, and he's written a book called The Con of Man.
Con?
Yeah, the C-O-N, The Con of Man. It's free on Kindle Prime. And when I read the book, Jeff, I felt such a relief because it kind of really explained a lot of things for me.
Now, is that like a naval con or is it like a con job?
Con job.
Okay.
It's a con job. And I'll tell you what it is. I'll just lay it out the bottom line. Whoever they are, who's ever standing behind the curtain, pulling the levers, they fear us ever figuring out what thought will do for us. Jeff, it is the number one thing. By the way, you know, I started this thing 60 Seconds for Humanity. I got the first threatening email telling me that I might want to rethink this. Anonymous. Wow. And when I see EYGX something at gmail.com,
you know it's anonymous.
Yeah. So
are you getting these emails, Wayne, and these messages on your channel from, there appears to be either
an AI?
No, they're either 5 or 6 really, really busy guys or some type of a troll or a bot, but it's this whole you white devils are going to burn, the black people are the real ones, it's our time, all the people in the Bible were black, you're devil. Are you getting those?
I haven't gotten that one.
Oh, I get it 5, 6 times a day.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Well, here's something I will say. The Chaldean account, the Adam, and it was actually Adama.
Yes. Was black.
And their race was the one who failed. They made a pact. And really the way that it turned out, listen, they made a deal with this dragon.
Yep.
And what the allurement was, and here's the common thread: knowledge. The dragon wanted the knowledge of the other gods.
Yep. And
man, the Adam, was used as a ploy to get it.
Yeah. And, even if you think about anthropological thought, it's now generally accepted that we came from where? Out of Africa.
Yeah, absolutely. We're the white now. The Chaldean account does talk about the light skin race. They're called the Sakara.
Yep.
They don't know where we came from. We just showed up. So I find
Are there any white races naturally from Africa?
No.
So because that's right, the Afrikaners are Dutch, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So really the continent of Africa, if life came from Africa, it came from black folks. There weren't no white folks there.
There weren't. No.
So the question is, where did we come from?
That's the real question. And you know,
We being white boys. Sorry
yes,
about
we
that.
really are. And you know, in fact, history shows this. It's the dark race that have made so many great breakthroughs. They're the ones who, in the Samara Valley, Samara, they're the ones that, if you read the Chaldean text, where the Onanes came up out of the sea and taught them. We have the same picture of Nimrod in the Tower of Babel, half fish, half man. Those are the Onanes. Now, I don't know if you know, but according to the book of Giants, that how Nimrod got his power. It was Seth who stole Adam's garment from Noah and gave it to, who was it? His mother, who in turn gave it to Nimrod. And somehow or another, when Nimrod put on the loincloth of Adam, he was endued from power on high.
Is that where the Masonic apron comes from?
Yes, yeah. And so when I start seeing all these similarity stories about, you know, the confusion of our tongue, I am led to believe that this is a documented case, and I will bring it up when I pass on to the high court. It's an indictment to the gods for what it was an attack. I call it a rape on the Homo sapien species, that they came in and they decided that they were going to confuse our language. Could you imagine where we'd be today if we all had the same common tongue?
That would be very interesting.
It would, wouldn't it?
It would.
I would say this. I'd say that we'd probably move to thought by now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There wouldn't be any actual linguistic communication. That's interesting. Do you think, Wayne, what we've talked about today, and how can it help, and what would you give to people as a bit of encouragement about, you know, there's a lot of racial tension in our country today.
Yeah, there is.
And how can we deal with that, knowing, and how does this ancient knowledge kind of put a new focus on that?
Okay, I'm glad you said that, Jeff, because here's what I see. We're a species. If we could understand that, get that into our consciousness, that we are a species, then understand that a species has many different races within it, but it's still a species. And one day, you know, I may be gone by then, I don't know, but I am leaving a legacy for mankind that maybe one day we will realize that it's the simple thought, Jeff, you mean me no harm. And if I could look at you and think harmony, I'm not going to harm you. You're not going to harm me.
You know what, Wayne? This doctrine of original sin, I'm full of sin, I'm born sinful. So I know that you are too. So that automatically makes me suspicious of you. But when the Christ said, you don't have original sin, you got the spark of divinity within, love yourself and then love your neighbors yourself. If you learn to know that you're divinity and you're loving me, now when I look at you through the lens of you have divinity in you. So it's an automatic affinity, not an automatic offense. And I hate to go Star Trek on you, but just imagine if, you know, it was the world of the Star Trek and we're on the Enterprise and we go beam down on some foreign planet. And all of a sudden we see a human, be him black, be him white, be him Asian, be him Mexican, be him Scandinavian. We see another human. Would we say, oh, that's a black human, I'm not going up to him? No, it'd be like, that's a human. Let me go over there. We love you. Hey, man, we're from the same place. And you know who I blame? I blame Jesus, and I have evidence. Red and yellow. Jesus loves the little children, all the children of the world. Red and yellow, black and white. Put them together and watch them fight.
Oh, God. Oh, well, I'll counter that. One of the most encouraging chapters that I have found in the New Testament, in which, you know, is John 17. And that is really what I call the true prayer for humanity.
Absolutely.
And if I could take any one part out of it and simply elevate it up here and say, all right, we're going to use this as our mantra. We're going to follow this. And what Jesus said is that God is in me, I'm in God, and God is in you as I'm in you. And what is that? It's the yin and the yang. It's there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And how will we know that we're making great spiritual progress? How will we know that we are becoming one with divinity? And how will other people looking at us know we're becoming one with divinity?
It's when you are attacked by a verbal assault and you can smile.
Yeah. Didn't Christ say, by this will they know that you're following my ways?
Yeah, I like what
When
Mark
you have love one for another.
And don't forget Mark 11:25. And here's what the scripture says. And if you have anything against anyone, right, then go ask for forgiveness. And it says not only forgive, but to forget.
Yep.
Totally forget. And I thought to myself, wow, okay, so the secret is this: offenses will come and go. But if I can look at it and say, okay, I can forgive, I can also forget, I'm going to go on.
Yeah.
And you know what? That's what the Christ was teaching. Because you know what? Now, Jeff, I can come to you without fear.
Yeah. You know, Wayne, somebody out there sitting there and saying, that's easy for you to upper middle class, well-educated, silver spoon in your mouth from birth, white guys. But how about me, a black person that has a history of slavery and being treated like an animal for hundreds and hundreds of years? It's easy for you to forgive. You really expect me to just forgive and forget?
Well, here's a little reality. I have a 9th grade education. I've been on my own since I was 15. At the age of 12, my father beat me so bad I had to learn how to walk again. I became a ward of the state of Texas. The state of Texas, in their wisdom, in the first foster home I was in, I was sexually molested by the oldest son of the foster parents. Yeah. Let me just tell you this. It's a decision. It's all it is.
You can be a victim or you can be a victor, and the power's in your hands.
I love my dad. He's the greatest man that I know. That's what forgiveness does.
Mm.
And you walk away. My dad, when he broke, he didn't know. He was blinded. He was living his life in darkness, as most of the people that are listening to our voice are doing. And he was just reacting to the hurt that was inside of him. I just happened to be the object of that hurt.
Mm.
So I know a little bit about pain.
That's powerful stuff. And that, I mean, I can't think of a better way to end this broadcast. We've all been played. We've all been deceived. We've all been enslaved. And it doesn't matter what color we are or where we're from or what we speak. We are all one. And until we realize that there's no them, only us, and until we realize no one's free until we're all free, we're not going to make that next jump. That's why I appreciate R. Wayne Steiger and his channel. That's what we're trying to do. That's why we appreciate almost 20,000 combined subscribers between us. And we hope it continues to grow and grow, because I'll just, it's a sorry dog that won't wag its own tail every now and again, Wayne. You don't hear this kind of talk very much on YouTube. These messages are unique, and it's my hope to see them grow and expand so that this vibration, this frequency, this feeling can grow and expand as well. I salute you for your work. I hope that we can get together again. And please, as we close, please give your contact information and share any last thought that's on your heart to leave with people. But I don't think you can beat that last one. That was pretty powerful.
Well, R. Wayne Steiger, YouTube, and 60 Seconds for Humanity. And Jeff, thank you, because listen, you and I don't have all the answers. We're digging like everybody else are, and I'm out there with the sifter trying to find that nugget. And it's people like you that I'm appreciative of, because I have found a fellow sojourn who is willing to break the mold, willing to take the ridicule and say, listen, what we've been taught, something's wrong here. I don't know what it is, but I'm searching.
Mm-hmm.
And Jeff, I can tell you, I'm probably going to stumble a few times. But
Yeah.
people like you, it certainly makes it a lot easier. And
You know, Wayne, I think we have a like mind. You know, a lot of people, and understandably so, they see all of the dung, all of the, you know, we can just leave it at dung, and they walk away from there just, oh, I'm done with it all. But yet I'm reminded of the little story that there's this kid, little boy like you or me, with a big smile on his face, digging through this dung, this horse dung. He's digging. And the guy's like, what's wrong with you? Are you crazy? Can't you see that's just a bunch of dung? And the boy says, but you don't see. With all of this dung, I know there's a pony in here somewhere. And you and me know there's a pony in there somewhere, and we're going to find it, and we're going to parade him around for everybody to see.
Captain, I salute you.
My pleasure, Wayne. Great to have you. And to all of you that seek for truth, for our Wayne Steiger, I'm Jeffrey Daugherty, the Christian whistleblower, and I do salute you.
Thank you, sir.